Well, hello again. This is Brian Copeland talking. Welcome to another edition of Copeland's Corner. Welcome to my family room. Missed you last week. If you saw or heard the podcast 2 weeks ago, I talked about the fact that I wrote my first novel, and it came out last week. And I've been doing book signings. We had a great big book launch. It is called Outraged, and it's the first in what is a crime series. It's available wherever books are sold. So pick one up. And any book club that reads it, I will be a part of your discussion, either in person if you're somewhere in the Bay Area close where I can get to you. If not, we'll do it over Zoom. So we're going to cut to it today because there's lots to talk about, and we're a little bit short on time today because one of our guests has to cut off for another thing. So let's see if we can bring them in, Charlene. If we can bring them up, get them out of the Zoom waiting room. Very special show this week. Joining me, two of my former co-hosts at KGO Radio in San Francisco, both stand-ups, and I was able to get them both on at the same time, and it's perfect because there's so much in the news to talk about. Chip Franklin is here to join us. Good to see you, my buddy. It's been forever. Down in San Diego. And Maureen Langan is back, who's become a regular here on the podcast. And I want to mention that Maureen is appearing at the Punchline in San Francisco on Tuesday, May the 7th at 7:30. So tickets are available now. Just go to the Punchline's website. So welcome, both of you. Good to see you. Good to see you both. All right, let's start with this. There's so much to talk about. I'm going to get as much in as we possibly can. I have stayed away on this podcast from talking about the Israeli Gaza war because I have felt like there's really no way to discuss this without ticking off everybody. Quite frankly. So I have tried to stay away from this because we do a lot of comedy on this show. We talk about the issues, but sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's not. And there's nothing funny about this, even remotely at all. But we have college campuses exploding all across the country. You know, we had the situation, this is recorded on Wednesday, drops on Thursday. We had the situation at Columbia University on Tuesday night. Early this morning at UCLA, where there is an encampment, a pro-Gaza encampment, they were attacked by some pro-Israeli group extremists. The Israeli organizations in Southern California and nationally have disavowed them, says that, we want peaceful civil exchanges. We don't want any kind of violence. We don't want to see anybody get hurt. But they attacked them. You had people who actually had to go to the hospital. There are encampments at Cal Berkeley. There's an encampment at UC Irvine, UC Riverside, as well as several other college campuses. And all of the commentary I was watching last night, they were saying that this is very reminiscent of the 1968 presidential campaign when you had all of the college students protesting the Vietnam War. And that the result of those protests and what happened at the Chicago Democratic Convention led to the election of Richard Nixon. Republicans think that this is a gift. Republicans think that this is a gift. And there are lots of millennials and Gen Zers I'm hearing, and this is all anecdotal, I'm hearing, who are saying that they will not vote for Joe Biden because of his stance on Israel when you have thousands of children who are being killed in Gaza every single day. Israel has a right to defend itself, they say. But at what point do we say, okay, enough is enough? That's their position. So I guess the question I want to ask you is, number one, how do you think that this should be dealt with on college campuses? Should law enforcement be called in? They were called into UCLA. Law enforcement was called into Columbia. And number two, do you think that this helps Trump?
Well, first of all, can I just say this, that I find it interesting that they're holding these protests during finals and not during spring break.
Maybe there is a way to make this funny. Thank you.
Not to be too cynical, but I think that is a big part of this. And
notepad. I'm listening though.
And you've seen this. You've seen these. Let's just talk about Hamas and Gaza just for a second, because I'm not going to give Israel a pass for their overreaction, I think. However, I do support them over Hamas and of course Gaza and what's happened there. I mean, does this help Republicans? I don't see how. I mean, these kids aren't going to go. First of all, these kids don't vote anyway. All right. You're talking about 19-year-olds. They don't vote. The ones that are doing this, they weren't going to come out and vote anyway. They're not part of that. What do they vote, like at 28% or something like that?
Okay, but what about the argument that since they're activists right now, even if they wouldn't have voted under normal circumstances, they're going to vote now?
You're going to vote for a guy that moved Jerusalem? That wanted to? Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that. I mean, so like Trump, the right today, if you watch Fox for 10 minutes, you'll see they're insane about this. And they see it as a political opportunity, but be careful what you ask for, like abortion, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, what's interesting?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I live 10 blocks from Columbia, and I was up there last week just watching what was going on. It was pretty contained within the walls, but beyond the gates. And I think people have a right to protest. The ACLU came out with a list of what they believe is the right way to handle these things. And once they broke the law, which is breaking into a building, and it reminded you of a little like mini Capitol rioting on January 6th type of vibe, they have a right to then be arrested and taken out of there. But what's really frightening to me here? It's the human side of all of this. Children and people dying in Gaza because Hamas, who ended the ceasefire by attacking young people dancing and partying and enjoying life. Hamas broke a ceasefire that had existed. And now that's who I can't stand. And that's where I wish this hate and anger and outrage was focused on, instead of putting up Palestinian and pro-Hamas flags as if we're like staking in this new claim. The anti-Semitism that I am watching on Signs is horrific to me. And I grew up in an area with a lot of Italians, Irish, and Jews. I'm a comedian. Everybody's Jewish except for me and Chip and you, Brian. And that's it. So it's like I put a post, I said, because of anti-Semitism, that does not mean I'm pro-killing Palestinians. I can't stand what Hamas has created, not Israel, what Hamas. And I think there's so much to know about the Balfour Agreement. There's so much history to know about Israel and that land that I am not versed in. I've read a lot about it. And I feel like, so I posted to my Jewish friends, what can I do to be helpful to you right now? Because and I'm so afraid of the backlash, as if and then people, Zionists or this. I want to know what my friends who are suffering, as if Brian, you were on the receiving end of racism. What can I do as a white woman to be helpful to you right now in my corner of the world? And I wanted to know, and people gave me good feedback. Some just wanted to hear, thank you for even acknowledging the end. I didn't say, what can I do to be helpful to you right now? Then people come at you. And what I'm trying to say is, I want to support my friends who are seeing the final solution signs, and what do? Kill the Jews? What are you talking? So that I'm not saying that they're equal things. Hamas is the enemy in this situation to me.
Hamas is the enemy, and we're talking about the killing of civilians, and Hamas is embedding itself, hiding among civilians, which is one of the reasons that so many civilians are getting killed. There's an American nurse who has been volunteering there for the past several months. She talked to ABC News, and she said that she told horror stories of just seeing literally hundreds and hundreds of children who were either killed or had limbs blown off, as well as civilians. And she said, in all the time she was there, she's not seen one soldier among the dead or among the wounded. It's all kids. It's all civilians.
Horrific. And so how do you?
So what do you do? But they're hiding amongst the, what do you, it kind of reminds me, the attitude kind of reminds me how like my grandmother was when I was a kid. I have 4 younger sisters. And if somebody did something, broke something or misbehaved in some way, but nobody would rat anybody else out, she would say, well, I'm just going to whip all of y'all. So that way I'm sure I get the right one. And that's almost kind of what it appears is happening in this situation.
Not Hamas, Hamama. That's your grandmama. Just as an American traveling abroad, oftentimes people think we're idiots with Trump and what we're doing politically, and they will take it out of me. What is with you stupid Americans? As if I'm the stupid one. I read books. I know the proper use of semicolons. What are you talking about? We're not. So I think what I'm seeing now is people who are against Bibi and Netanyahu and how Israel is handling this, and perhaps rightfully so. I'm not going to the political world on this. I'm just saying they're now taking it out on people who happen to be Jewish. And that's what's troubling me. As an American overseas, I don't want to have to represent the worst of America or things people don't like in America and then have to be verbally or physically attacked because of that. I have been verbally attacked. I don't want to have to live in fear I don't want to be afraid to walk onto a campus as an American woman. And this is what's happening for the Jews. And that worries me. This anti-Semitism.
Let me ask you about this. How large a part do you think anti-Semitism is playing in these protests?
Huge. It's at the very core. Mm-hmm. I believe. I believe that, like, most of these people, first of all, you can't even talk to these kids. I mean, 5 minutes into a conversation, I feel like Christy Gnome's puppy, right? I mean, these guys are these people are insane. I mean, and it's funny too. I love the idea that that they want divestiture from this, but who actually has a lot of money in Israel? Starbucks.
I thought you meant.
Yeah, so when these guys stop getting their triple grande latte foam without cappuccino, whatever, then I'll take them seriously. But this reminds me of apartheid a little bit too. You mean, it's like, you mean all these gas companies are located in South Africa, and how will I get to work if I can't use their gas? I mean, it's selective outrage. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot here under Trump. Listening, you heard the Trump magazine interview, the Time interview, what he said he would do. I mean,
we're going to get to that. I've got a whole list.
But I mean, it's part and parcel, because you talk about the politics of this and anti-Semitism. I think that most people in America don't know a Jew, right? There's 3% of the population or less than that are Jewish. If they know them, they kind of just know them from a distance, right? Where I live in San Diego, I'm in a tight group of people who have family. I mean, all our friends here are Jewish. It's crazy, and many of them have family that live in Israel. And everybody, and I've never been to Israel, but everything I hear says that's, anybody can go to Israel, right? But when I see Queers for Palestine in Manhattan, and I'm thinking, wait a second, take that shit over there and see what happens to you in about 15 minutes or less. Mm-hmm. Again, just a little bit of perspective from these kids would be nice. Yeah, let's say we should stop the bombing, which Hamas could stop tomorrow by releasing the hostages.
Yeah,
that's the whole thing. That's the thing. It could end tomorrow if they release the hostages. This killing of innocent people in Gaza is horrific to me. It's inhumane. I can't bear it. I can't bear children and mothers dying. Again, I blame Hamas. But you do wonder. I have questions. I wish we could sit and talk. Like the Balfour Agreement with 1948 that gave the land to the Jews. How did that come about? Was it promised to the Arabs? I understand. How does one come about coexistence? I got to tell you though.
For 1,000 years, though. I mean,
who, the Jews or the Palestinians?
Jews, Jews have been there for 4,000 years. I mean, they've been there a long.
Yeah, but I kept go back to like Jesus. I remember he was there. He hung out there. It's like, wasn't what they just all descended on a vacation in 1948.
And every country there has kicked out the Palestinians. Every single country has kicked them out of their country. Not everyone, including Jordan, who offers them the West Bank, which is the last place you would want them to be if you were Israel, sitting on a hill overlooking your backyard. We saw what happened with Gaza with an unprotected border. They came right in. Hamas are the bullies we knew in junior high with weapons. I mean, this is
what's interesting. You say most people don't know many Jews, and I know so many Jews.
American.
I mean,
but now I grew up, just like you, Maureen. I grew up and continue to be Catholic, and I went to Catholic school growing up. From the 4th grade on, and I didn't meet a Jewish person until I was at Catholic high school, and there was one. And then after that, it wasn't until I got into comedy. And now, and once I got into comedy, there are so many comics who I know who are Jewish, and I have so many friends who are Jewish. And after October 7th, I did the same thing you did. I reached out to my Jewish friends and said, what can I do? I just wanted to call and offer you my support, because there's not one of them who I know who was not affected, who didn't have a family member there or a friend there or somebody who was serving in the military there who was missing after the 7th. They were all in some way impacted by what happened. And just hearing what I was told was, there's really nothing I can do from where it is that I sit. However, just knowing that I gave a crap and knowing that I was offering my support was helpful, is what I'm told.
I asked somebody to give me something proactive. First of all, living on the Upper West Side, which I believe has more Jews than Israel, Manhattan, I might be kidding, or the second most Jews in the world are in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. So I walk by the hostage signs are everywhere of the people, and then you write the slurs that are written across them. And I just think, and then an officer was outside of Columbia. I was chatting with him last week. And he said, look at this, what's happening here? He goes, do these people, how lucky, these people, meaning collective groups of people, all of us, how lucky we are to be in America. they can talk this out. We don't want to get involved in this. Let's work this out, protest. But I think a lot of these college kids, these kids today, this is their cause now. And I don't even think they're wearing, the blonde girl with the pigtails is wearing the cool cook. I don't know how you say it, the scarf.
The majority of the people there aren't students. The majority are people that have come from the outside to join the students. So I don't know what percentage are students, but I hear that they're a minority in these groups. So that plays out as well.
In Colombia, there was it was outside agitators, who came in to whip these things up. But, anti-Semitism in America has been on the rise over the course of the last 5 years. I mean, you've seen synagogues burned and it's really been on the rise for the last 4 or 5. Well, as has racism and every other kind of anti-white Christian bigotry.
Remember, Charlottesville, Jews will not replace us.
That's right.
And also, too, after 9/11, when we, I had a lot of questions, and when people were being very anti-Muslim, I said the same thing to my Muslim American friends. What can I do to be helpful to you? This is horrific. But as you know, before the pandemic,
you know what they said, Maureen?
Get away from me, Langan.
No,
stay away.
They said, put a burqa over your head. There you go. And you can.
No, see that, but I have very modern. I don't know who you're hanging out with, but. No, my Muslim friends, you don't have Muslim friends who are modern?
Yeah, but I will say this, that Islam is still very misogynistic. I mean, Bill Maher's right, and I don't say that frequently.
I'm talking, I have mainstream friends like, modern Orthodox Jews or secular Jews, modern Muslim friends, But, I don't have a lot of burqa-wearing friends. I'm not opposed to. I just can't really get to know them that well. There's a lot of layers between us. But the thing is, Brian knows this. The Sicilian, my fella, who's Italian American, we learned just before the pandemic that his mother was 100% Jewish. Never told him. Her father left Romania. Yeah, her father left Romania, and we found a letter. He said, "Why should I be conscripted to serve in their military when I don't have equal rights as a Jew?" And he talked about it. So I realized I may not have known that the Sicilian. He didn't know he was Jewish. I'm more Jewish.
No, and I knew his mother. His mother.
She was Jewish, never told him. It's just and why? Was it because I think probably she was abroad who didn't really care about religion, but his family was religious. I did a lot of research. And, so it's just interesting. He didn't grow up with any awareness of that. And was it hidden because she came up through World War II and knew or did she just not care or whatever? Who knows?
Or did she not know?
She knew. It was told. I have letters.
It was clear. Yeah. It was clear that she knew.
You married out of the faith, but still we support you. Oh no, I said, Tony, you're as Jews you can get without side curls. I said, these letters and then the aunts. Why? I don't hear back. I don't understand. But the whole thing is. At some they were in the Hadassah and very active in Jewish communities. And how
much of being a Jew is state of mind as opposed to, for example, everybody in the Middle East except for the Persians are Semites, right? The Arabs and Jews, and of course it's ideology that separates them. This incredible ideology war that's been going on for a couple thousand years. And so when I look at this and I ask myself. As a Catholic kid, you probably guys remember this. When I found out Jews didn't believe in hell, I was like, I want to be a Jew. Right? I was like,
but when I found out they didn't do Christmas, I was like, you're on your own.
Yeah, well,
what's amazing
Christmas is a week long.
There's so much. There's so much ignorance. I had a comic friend of mine tell me that when he was a kid growing up in the 80s, his first day at high school, he was in the boys' locker room. Taking off his clothes to hop in the shower after working out. And one of the other white boys, somewhere in the Midwest is where he grew up, is just looking at him and staring at him. And he finally goes, "What's the problem?" And the kid says, "Where's your tail?" He goes, "What?" "Well, I was, he's Jewish. You guys, you all have tails. That you don't have tail. Where's your tail?" And he literally believed it. He wasn't, trying to be disparaging. He literally believed it and wasn't the only one who had been taught that. And again, this is the 80s. This isn't so some ignorant parents are teaching their kids this kind of crap. It's just, it's such a complex issue. It's such a complex issue, which is why I've stayed away from it on this podcast. But what's going on? I figure we at the very least, we had to have a conversation about it.
But Maureen, do you guys ever work Charlie Goodnights?
No, I know of it, but I never worked it.
Yeah, 100 years ago. Yeah.
It's in North Carolina. I was there, and it's this MC of this young Jewish kid from New York, and he goes on stage and he goes, "I'm Jewish," and I hear somebody in the back of the room goes, "I thought you were."
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Oh, well,
It was like that. I mean, I remember talking to black comics from DC who used to work some of my one-nighters, and they come back going, "Man, I'm never going back there again." And it's a fascinating thing to look at. When comedy first started, I remember hearing a lot of Jewish comics that would leave New York City and they'd be in Ohio doing jokes about the subway. And people like, "What are you talking about?" It was really difficult in the very beginning for Jewish comedians to try to, realize that this is not like working a catch, right? I mean, where, people understand,
Yeah. I think because I'm from New York and I'm New Yorkie, people associate that with Jewish. Jewish and New York people associate as the same. So oftentimes, many times people have thought I was Jewish, and I'm Jewish, but it's that.
Okay, Santos.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's a New York thing, so I get that. But I was at a gathering once, and there was 3 women. The 3 women were talking about the school system and the Jews, the Jew parents, and their Jew kids are so entitled, and this, and they went on and on. And I didn't know them. I was overhearing them. It was a big gathering, and later on, they had a few drinks. They go, "Oh my God, why didn't you tell us you're a comic? We didn't know you were a comic." I go, "Oh, well," and I didn't know you were anti-Semitic. So there's a lot of things we didn't know about each other.
we learn about each other.
I'm
going to move on, Big, since we, again, I didn't want to give this short shrift, and we will discuss this on the podcast again in the future as there are more developments and as we
alienate more people. Yes, let's alienate.
Really. As I said, it's such a complex issue. It's one that we can't avoid talking about. We can't.
And I do want to say, though, I want peace. And I want people to live in peace, and I want the Palestinian people to be okay, and I want the Jewish people to be okay, and I want Hamas to rot. Thank you, Maureen. Okay.
Chip
Hold on,
mentioned.
I'm writing that down. What did you say? Say it again. I'm sorry.
Chip, you mentioned, I think, the Time magazine interview that was published yesterday that Donald Trump gave, and he talked about what he would do in a second term. And among the things that he said is that there would be no 2-state solution. That he would support as the president in the second term. But here's a list of this is just some of the things he said he would do in a second term. He would outlaw abortion. He would open migrant detention camps. He would fire an attorney general who didn't prosecute the people he wanted prosecuted. He would pardon the January 6th insurrectionists. He would deploy the National Guard against protesters. He'd be dictator for just the first day. He believes that there will be violence only if he loses. There would be mass layoffs of civil servants, and they'd be replaced with Trump loyalists. He would bomb Mexico. He would terminate the Constitution. He would investigate political adversaries. He'd reinstate and expand the ban of people from Muslim countries. He would end birthright citizenship. He'd withdraw from NATO. He would gut the EPA. He would allow states to punish women who have abortions. He would grant immunity under all circumstances to all police officers. He would require stop and frisk. He would terminate the Department of Education, shoot shoplifters, punish hospitals that provide transgender care, and there would be federal takeovers of democratic cities such as DC, Chicago, and New York. So that said,
but hey, Brian, but other than that.
Why is he bombing Mexico? I just want to know why he's bombing Mexico.
I don't get that either. Why bomb Mexico? Oh, and he would electrify the wall. That was the other thing.
My favorite is when he's going to have the military act as police, which violates grab him by the posse comitatus, right? You can't do that. That is against the law. It's actually a law passed. There's many of what he says. All this plays out, though. Think about this. If the Supreme Court acts as insane as they might be by the fact that they're considering this immunity story, right?
Yep.
I thought maybe they were doing that after listening to Sotomayor and Judge Jackson talk a little bit. I thought, well, maybe they're just doing this to make a point. But then listening to Clarence Thomas come out and say that, some other presidents in the past supported coups and they weren't punished. So there's there's a frightening aspect to this. If the immunity thing goes through, then all bets are off, right?
All bets are off. And you have to remember, they're going to install loyalists. All of the quote unquote adults who were in the room during the one term that he's had, who were able to protect America from his worst impulses, they will be gone. And they will only be loyalists. And if you think that you're going to end up with a Congress that is going to do anything to stop him, if he's got the court and he's got the Congress, they're all MAGA and they're not going to say anything or try to stop him from suspending the Constitution, and the Supreme Court finds some kind of rationale that they pull out of thin air in order to justify it. We are, we can't rely on the institutions that this country has always lived with to protect us from this nonsense. So I will ask you again, why is it then that even in spite of all this, the way that the interview ends is he says that he thinks that people like this. He says they like it. The people like this, what it is that he's talking about doing. So explain to me why 70 million people who were supposedly born and raised here in America could support any of this. It's so un-American. It's, talk about terminating the Constitution, for God's sake. I just don't understand the mindset. Are they bigots? Are they dupes? Are they brainwashed? What is it? Is it the disinformation that they're getting from their news sources?
It's easy. They're intellectually lazy. All of this stuff takes work. Everything that the three of us here are talking about here, we've invested time and an interest in who we are in our communities and how that spreads across the nation.
And what about reading? And what is the source that you're reading? And cross-referencing. We were all broadcasters. I was a journalist for years. So listening to, I'm sorry, I'm jumping in on this, Chip, because on your point. So, for example, when there are oral arguments before the Supreme Court about the right to abortion in Idaho, emergency medical care there, that's a big case, or the immunity case, to listen through the entire argument and then hear those words for yourself and hear what that argument is and what it references back to, and then go read that, makes you informed. So you're just not like, I don't want them killing pink babies. You get to understand more. You have to understand. There's more to it. And they don't mind about the black and the brown ones. Sorry, Brian, but it's the pink ones. But it's really good to hear a source. C-SPAN, as boring as it is, listen to the whole thing. Don't let other people take the sound bites for you and package them. That's Maureen Langan.
Well, they love children from conception until first social service payment. And then, but after that, they're dead to them. And everything in between that, what they've chosen is, again, this is the whole evangelical thing, right? That happened with the idea. And this is when, the Catholic Church, since we're all Catholics, we started that way. You remember after Roe v. Wade, the Catholic Church started going right? They started going far right, and they were with them forever. I think now you're starting to see they're going, okay, the single issue voting thing is not working out for us. And that's what's led us to this. I mean, there is no third rail anymore, right?
You know what? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Actually, we grew up with this concept that there's some things that are that you cannot violate. Whether it used to be Social Security, you couldn't touch Social Security. That's still kind of the third rail, really, in a way. Yeah. Now with abortion, and we saw what happened in 2022. It was supposed to be a red wave. It wasn't. The Democrats came out, and everything we're hearing right now, I'm really hopeful that in states like Florida, which enacted this incredibly draconian abortion law, I'm hoping that this gives the state an opportunity to go blue again. And that's not.
Yeah, but here's the problem. Let me stop you for a second. Here's a problem. There's an article I read in the AP this morning that Florida's might be the first loss of the abortion rights movement. So far, every state, red or blue, where there's been a referendum on the ballot to guarantee abortion rights or codify it into the state constitution, they've all passed, every single one. But the problem with Florida is it's got to be a supermajority. It's got to be 60%. And they've only passed 60% in a couple of the blue states. But those that leaned red, like Ohio, or it was Kansas, the other one, they got over 50%, but they didn't touch 60. So it's going to be a big.
But here's the thing about that, Brian. It's still 51% to win a seat in the legislature. It's still 51% to get in the Senate or the House.
True.
So there may be an end around on this, right? And that's what everybody's hoping for. That you'll go down there, that you'll see the blue wave take over on, again, if Biden wins Florida, it's over. Forget the swing state. You don't even need the swing state.
This is such a big issue, the abortion issue, and that's going to bring people out. And there's a lot more messaging that needs to be done around it so people understand it's not just pink little babies, that you're keeping alive. What it is, I talked to a friend of mine yesterday. Her daughter, 4.5 months pregnant, chose an abortion because everything in the baby, the brain, the heart, everything. So if it did live to term, it was going to be a horrible life, just medical, just awful. She had to come to that gut-wrenching decision. In Idaho, the case right now that they're deciding in front of the Supreme Court is during the Reagan administration, if you went to an emergency room, you had to get stabilizing care, whether you were poor, broke, homeless, drug addict, indigent, anything. You could not be shopped to another hospital. Hey, not our problem. So they're fighting. The woman, the Solicitor General, for Elizabeth, whatever her name is freaking fantastic, a brilliant woman. So what we're doing now is when women go to the hospitals in Idaho and their baby's dying inside of them or will potentially die, maybe not yet, maybe before birth, maybe stillborn, but definitely all these chromosomal things, but the mother is not in imminent death, nobody can do anything to help her. So they have to airlift her to another state, or she has to, at a great expense, go to another state while she's in this most fragile, painful of times. These are the things people are voting against when they vote against the right to have an abortion. It's medical care. But what people are voting on is anger. I mean, I'm angry, and that's what will bring out people who are pro-choice. Anger. We have this, they have more than we do. Those people get away with more. Those people are taken from me. Those brown people over the border, not white people from Canada. Listen, I got a lot of relatives from Ireland who got themselves over here. You understand? Not with the right paperwork. They have it now, though. Nobody was like cracking down on all them Irish people. So there's an anger at other. And that's what we're seeing. And that's what motivates people. So the anger will allow people to rationalize a lot of crap. And that's why people are behind Trump. He's not doing it that way. Good. Hey, who needs NATO? So what? Who cares? If Putin goes into another country, then my kids are going to have to fight in a war. Oh, you didn't tell me that. Because you don't read and you don't know what's going on out there, and they're angry, and that's what they're voting on.
What surprised me, we were Chip mentioned the Kristi Noem thing with the dog, and I was going to talk about that a little bit. What surprises me is the fact that you have a Republican Party that is okay with a 10-year-old being forced to carry her rapist stepdaddy's baby to term, but the right went ballistic over the shooting of a dog. I mean, this was bipartisan, the outrage against Noem for the story of shooting her dog in the face. It's bipartisan. They said her career's over. Everything I'm reading saying that's it. She's done because everyone loves it, except for Trump. Is like the first person I've ever heard of who didn't like dogs, even if you don't want one. He's the first president in 120 years. But the fact of the matter is, it's just so incredibly hypocritical. You're okay with a 10-year-old being forced to carry a baby to term, but you're outraged that somebody shot a puppy.
Well, I do have to tell you, our dog is very sick, and we have to decide whether to put him to the dog park in the Sky. We're making that decision.
Yeah, but that's different. If you've owned a dog, you've had to put it down. You've had when they get old,
I know.
But that's different than this.
It kind of, but what my quandary now is, do I pay the vet bill or do I just call Kristi Noem and have it done? Do you understand? Do I save some money? I don't know where to go with it. I have options now that I didn't realize I had. She's pro-choice. I got a choice. She's sick, twisted.
But you know what she's done? She's doubled down. In the last 24 hours, she's doubled down. She's doubled down by saying, "Hey, we had to kill 3 horses a couple of weeks ago." She's doubling down with all the animals.
And Kristi Noem is the governor of what? Idaho, North Dakota, South Dakota?
South Dakota.
And look, South Dakota, what is it like? There's 5 people there named Daryl and a coyote. And she gets all this power, and this state has this kind of influence. In fact, when you add the 2 Dakotas up, the population, I believe, the total population is about what it is in Washington, D.C., which has no representation, right? They got 4 U.S. senators and 2 congressmen. They have more senators than they have congressmen because of the population. I look at these areas and I look at people like this and the influence they have. Again, let's go back to what MAGA is. This can even go back to our original part of the conversation about these kids on college campuses with incomplete information. MAGA is right now and with Green trying to get, I call her Dairy Queen. By the way, this is great. I call Marjorie Taylor Greene Dairy Queen, and Eric Swalwell called it to her face the other day because he listens. He called her Dairy Queen. Yeah, I love it. Anyway.
Good going, Chip. I love it, baby.
So anyway,
let me before you go on, I know Maureen's got to leave in a couple of minutes.
Oh, you do? Oh, shoot.
I do. Go ahead. I'll let you finish. Go ahead. I don't want to. Go ahead. I'm not being.
I just think MAGA wants to destroy the Republican Party, and the Republican Party has to figure out, who they are. I mean, MAGA is to democracy what Britney Spears is to mental health. Okay, this is where we are. They do not want a Democratic Republic anymore, and they've said it.
No, they've said it.
That's it in a nutshell. I
want to end with this, something that is sort of lighter. Real quick before you get out of here, Maureen. Cass Elliott's daughter, Owen Elliott Kujel. Have you heard about this? She's written a book, and she was 7 years old when her mother died in 1974 of a heart attack. And in the book, she takes on the rumor. Okay, the rumor about Mama Cass's death. Yeah, I was going to ask. We've all heard the rumor. We've all heard the jokes. And she said that from the time she was a child, her mother died when she was 7. She said she'd be at other kids' houses and after school to play. And after a while, their parents would go, "So what was up with your mom dying from that ham sandwich?" To a child. God. So she decided to track down this rumor to find out exactly how it started. And where it started was it was a book that was written by a good friend of Cass Elliott's, who was a Hollywood reporter. A former Hollywood reporter. It was called Hollywood Secrets and Scandals. And what she said was that she called Cass Elliott's apartment in London, and Alan Carr, her manager, answers the phone, and he's crying. He's in tears, and he says Cass is dead, and there's a half-eaten ham sandwich next to the bed. So I need you to tell everybody that she choked on the ham sandwich and died. And the reason being, she found out, was because he was afraid that everybody was going to say that she overdosed and that it was a drug overdose, and he was trying to protect her legacy.
And how did she die? Did she die from a heart attack?
A heart attack. She died from a heart attack.
Oh, she did die from a heart attack.
That and say that Elvis did not die sitting on the toilet from a heart attack. He was the only place he could get his Wi-Fi to work, and that's why he died there.
Maureen, thanks for being with us. I want to plug your gig one more time. You're at the Punchline in San Francisco on Tuesday the 7th.
Yeah, the Tuesday the 7th of May. I'm going to be headlining there, 7:30, San Francisco Punchline. I hope you guys will come out. We're going to have a lot of fun, a lot to talk about. Let's just connect, have a lot of laughs. Really need to connect. Brian, I hope you'll have me come back soon. Thanks a lot. I miss both of you fellas.
And how do you get younger every time I see you? What is it that? What?
Then how do you get younger?
How can you look younger and more beautiful every time we see you?
Smoke and mirrors, baby. Smoke and mirrors. And follow me at Maureen Langan, LANGAN.com. Love you guys.
Love you.
I'm paying the meter now. Gotta go.
Okay.
All right, Chip, you got anything that you would like to mention? Anything you want to plug?
Just, follow me on at Really American Media on YouTube. You can see
Really American Media on YouTube. We will do this again and do a longer program. We had some technical issues and things today, so we'll do this again and do a longer show. A pleasure to have you. A pleasure to have you, man. Good to see you. Good to see you.
See you.
All right, that's going to do it for us for this week. We will check you out next week on Thursday. Again, we record Wednesdays. We drop on Thursdays. A couple ways you can support the show if you like what it is that you're listening to or that you're watching. If you're watching us on YouTube, if you can subscribe. Because once we have 1,000 subscribers, then we can go live, which is what I want to do so I can incorporate your comments. If you are listening to us on your favorite podcast app, go and give us a 5-star review, because it helps people to find the show. So I will check you out next time. Until then, be kind to your neighbor. He knows where you live.